Hello guys, today we're going to be talking about mixology with different types of color, as well as we're also going to be talking about developers and bleach as well when you're mixing bleach. Now, with this being said, we want to start with developers. You have some lines that have 5 and 6 volume levels, and then we start with our 10 and 20, 30, and 40. Now, this is what we call a 10 volume developer. It's measured in volume, okay? It is predominantly hydrogen peroxide. And when you want to figure out how do I use a developer on your client, depending upon if you're lifting and how fast you want to lift and to what level you want to lift. Now, one way I love to think about developers and everything is if you look at this is 10, 20, 30, 40, and you like, I want to go 2 levels up, I want to go 3 levels up. Well, if you drop the 0, that tells you your level you can go up, okay? So if I were to cover up this 0, that tells me I can go up 2 levels. That tells me I can go up 3 levels. And with the 40 volume developer, it tells you can go up 4 levels, and it is also the maximum strength you can get. Now, the one thing I would say about using 40 is you better watch your client. Okay, 40 can get dangerous. You can lose hair with it very easily because it is the highest, it's the strongest, it's the fastest. So if you're going to use 40 on it, I would use it in a place that you can watch and keep an eye on it every 5 minutes, checking to see where you're at. As soon as you hit the level you want to, rinse out. You don't want to leave it in there for a great period of time. Now, can you reach the level that a 40 can bring? Can I raise my clients up 4 levels with a 20? Most likely, yes. Okay, it doesn't matter. We just use these as increments. This is 1 level, 2 level, 3 level, 4 level, and this is a 5 volume, which means that it's basically almost kind of just for deposit only. It would lift a little bit, but not very much, and it's mainly for deposit only. And then when you're talking about lifting your hair, say for instance, if somebody is a level 3 and they want to be a level 5 or 6, 20 would do the trick. Sometimes you have to leave it in there longer, and it depends on the bleach you're using as well. And you know, investing in good product is worth the money. Don't buy something because it's cheap, especially to use on your client's hair. Give them the respect to use quality product. Now, the most expensive product is not always the best product either. You have to research, do your research, find out what products you work for you and go with that. Okay, so that's the important thing. And when you're using bleach especially, find the bleach that works and that's the safest for your clients. Many bleaches today have their own bonders in it, so you don't even have to worry about putting like Olaplex in there to help protect the hair or anything like that. So you want to find something that is a very good bleach to use. Okay, this is very important. So when we're also talking about lifting, now we're going to talk about mixing. Okay, so if I'm looking at depositing color, and we want to stick with probably your level 10 or your level 20. Okay, if you're talking about you don't need a lot of lift on the hair, you're covering gray hair, you just want a slight lift to it and to be able to deposit the color in there. We need something that's going to open up the cuticle so that those molecules can go inside that cuticle and go into the cortex of the hair and stay there for permanent. So that's going to be your 10 and 20. Now, if you're looking at somebody that's a virgin application and they want to go up a few levels, then you're going to probably look at your 30, okay? So that's when we're talking about color. Now, we're talking about color mixing. One of the things I like to do is use colored bowls too, okay? So this way, let's say if I'm putting 2 different colors in the hair, I can put the darker color in my black bowl, and then I can put the lighter color in this bowl. So that way I don't ever have to question myself of which one is which. And I try to use different colored brushes as well, so I can continue with that. Now this is the same thing that I do when I'm applying bleach. If I had bleach in there and I'm doing a color and a bleach at the same time, again, my color in the dark bowl and my bleach in the light bowl. This helps and saves you a lot of confusion a little bit later. So we're going to talk about mixing color first. Now, when you are mixing color, the most important thing to do is to make certain that you always read the instructions. Lines change. Sometimes they have different ratios, like for instance, Salern has a 1-to-1 ratio if you're coloring gray. But now if you're not coloring gray, it can be a 1-to-1.5 ratio. If you're not good at math, then lay something down on the table, okay? You can take your brushes and go, this is 1.5 plus 1.5. Okay, so that's 3. Okay, so you know that 1.5 plus 1.5 is 3. And then you're going to say 2, you know, and use this as your developer one. So lay stuff on the table so you can know how to count. Okay, it's very important. Or you can use a scale, even easier. Okay, so if I'm going to use a scale, the first thing I want to do is to place this on there so that I can zero this out. Okay, so that's very important. So place that on there so I can zero it out. So I turn my scale on. It's to 0. Then I'm going to take my color and I'm going to put the color in there. You can use a key as well. I'm just doing this. I took a color that was already opened, not even really concerned about what color it is. I'm just going to get the color out and get it open. And this shows me that I have basically about 0.9 ounces, so almost 1 ounce. So we can say 1 ounce. So what I can do from this point, it is 1 ounce actually, exactly. So what I can do from this point is either I can put an ounce in there to equal 2 ounces of the developer, or if I want to, I could just turn the scale off, turn it back on, and put an ounce in there. I'm just going to go ahead and go to 2. So I'm going to keep pouring this in until this reaches 2. If you go a little bit over or under, that's okay, not a problem. I want to turn my scale off so I don't waste my battery. I want to take whatever brush is there, and I'm just going to mix that really well. You can also use a whisk. A lot of times I find I just use my brush. It's there, it's easy, and I can kind of flatten that out really good. Now the one thing about there is you want to mix this very, very well, okay? So you can see I'm mixing this very well. If I see clumps, and I kind of just brush those clumps and try to break them up some so I can get this very good and mixed very well. I can smell that ammonia in there. Okay, so you can see this is really good. It has a good consistency. It's thick. I don't have any clumps in there. You don't want clumps. You want to make sure you have it all in there, and this is ready to go. And this is ready to go and apply into the client. Okay, so that is one of our mixes there. This we would throw away, and this I'm going to put aside right now. Okay, so that's one way of doing it. Now the other way of doing it is if you have a tube of color, like let's just kind of pretend this is a full tube of color. I know there's about 2 ounces in this tube. If I don't have a scale, the rule of thumb is if you're mixing color and you don't have a scale, always, always, always start with your developer. So if you know it's 1-to-1 ratio and you have 2 ounces in here, so we have 2 ounces here, that means I need 2 ounces of developer as well. So if I knew that, then what I would do from the start is if you look inside these bowls on this rim, it has markings and measurements. So you can actually get a 2 ounce measurement there. So what I would do from the start is if you don't have a scale and you know you've got 2 ounces here because it says it on the tube and you're going to use the whole tube, start with your developer. Put your developer in first, go up to the 2 ounce mark on there, which is basically right in the bottom. The first little mark on the bottom says 2 on it, 2 ounces. pour your developer in first, then put your entire tube of color in there and mix it up. That's how you can use your bowls without a scale. But you got to be able to see those numbers. Okay, so just make sure you can see those numbers. But if you're mixing without a scale, always start with your developer first and then put your color in. Okay, so very important. Now let's go to a different type of a color. And let's talk about if we're using a bottle. Okay, the bottle is used quite often, and it is used for whatever application you want to deem it for. If you can come up with it, it'll work. You can squeeze regular color in here. You don't have to use just like a liquidy color. Okay, so on the bottle, and I'm just holding this up to the light so that I can see very well, it should have your ounces on there. So that should be about 4, I believe, 40. So 4. So this must be our ounces there. I like them when they really measure it out. Okay, so the one thing I'm going to know, even if it doesn't have the markings that I want, but I like ounces and this one doesn't really have the ounces, you can always go off of of your eye in it too. Okay, we know this is the Shades of Q line. I'm not promoting them. I'm just basically using them because it's the product we have in stock right now. And this is going to be, should be 2 ounces in there, I believe. Yeah. So there's 2 ounces in one bottle. This is a 1-to-1 ratio. So if I have 2 ounces in here, I need 2 ounces of this, okay? If I didn't have a marking on there that showed me ounces, then just kind of eyeball it. It should be 1-to-1, okay? So I'm gonna take this and I'm just gonna pour it directly. I always start with my color first. Now this is a level 5, so you can tell it's pretty dark. And you can tell that's basically right below this line. So there's lines on here. So this up to this line is almost 2 ounces. And I want to show you this. Let's see if I can get a little bit closer. So you can see that line right there. And we're just below it. So what I want to do, since I did 1 and almost 2 lines, I want to do 1 and almost 2 lines here. So I'm going to end at this line now in my developer because I want to keep it even. So just like I ended at that line there, there we go. And now we've got 4 ounces. Okay, so we kept that basically the same. You're going to put your top back on it. You don't really have to shake it like vigorously, but I like to kind of rotate it and really mix it very well. I like to do mine in kind of a circle. Some people like to do this right here and shake it up and down. I like to just do it in a circle. Now to apply this is called a toner. To apply this toner in the hair, basically you're going to use this on clients that you've already lifted to the level you want to. It's usually used in a double process or it's used in retoning. Okay, this is a semi-permanent, probably lasts about 4 to 6 weeks and they're going to come up for another tone again. And so what you would do is basically mix this together. I like to dampen their hair or wet their hair, or either I just apply this as soon as after I've washed the bleach out, towel dry it really well, apply this in, and once I apply it into the hair, I pull it through. So I pull it through and just make sure that it really gets in everywhere I want it to, and I let it sit for about 15-20 minutes is what the direction says, but also once it tones to the level you want, you can wash out. Okay, but I let it sit in there, and then it's ready to go in there and it's ready to apply. So that's when we do liquid toners. Okay, so we've got 2 color. We have the liquid toners. This is a semi, this is a permanent. And now we're going to talk a little bit about bleach. Okay, bleach is something you should always, and even with color, you should always wear gloves with. With the bleach, again, you can do just like I said with the color. Okay? You can use a scale, or you can use dry measure. Okay, if I'm going to not use a scale and I'm going to put my bleach in there, again, I'm going to start with my developer first. Typically, depending on the bleach, it's usually 1 scoop of bleach, which is about 1 ounce to 2 ounces of your developer, and then you mix it and apply. If I'm going to use a scale, it's a lot more exact. So if I'm not going to use a scale, again, start with your developer, and I'll show you how to do that. You won't be able to see this, probably, but if we look on there, there's some lines and there's a 2 at the bottom, okay? So if I'm gonna go to 2 ounces, I'm doing this without a scale. I hold it up to the light so I can see my 2, and then I just go ahead and pour in the developer. Until I get to about a 2. Once I get to 2, and this is 10, so we know if we're gonna be lifting somebody's hair, we're not gonna lift it very high, it's only about there. You can see that I've got not even half the bowl of developer. Once you've reached that, then you're gonna reach in and grab your bleach. And we said about 1 scoop is an ounce, so we're just gonna do 1 scoop in there. And then you're going to mix. Now on brushes, now try to be careful not to mix too fast so you can get powder. You're going to get powder bleach everywhere. Okay, and you can also use a whisk. This is not to the consistency that it won't, but it's getting there. Now the good thing about bleach too is if it gets a little too runny and it's not where you want it, or it doesn't mix the way you like it, and you can always add more bleach or you can add more developer until you get a consistency that you like. But you don't want to change their formula too much. But you can thicken it up. Now remember too, when you're sitting there mixing this bleach is going to thicken. It softens and swells. So as it sits there longer, it's going to get even thicker and it's going to get a little more consistency. And you can see we have that to a nice level. And then this is also going to be really great when you're doing the application as well. Okay, so very important. So you can see there it's a little runny for my taste. I'll usually have it a little bit thicker than that. So if I want to, I can just add a little more bleach. Maybe this one is not quite an ounce. Just put a little bit more in there. And you see I'm being careful so I don't get bleach all over the floor, all over me. This bleach will ruin your clothes. So definitely wear an apron. Now this is more the consistency I like. It's starting to get to a better consistency. And sometimes it also depends on what developer you use. If you're not using their developer, their formulas don't always work. Okay, that's a little bit better. It's still runny, but it's also manageable and controllable. So when you're using powder bleach, sometimes you have to play with it. But this is a really good level right there. I like that level. It's thick enough to use, and this is going to get thicker and a lot more controllable as it sits there longer. Okay, so we've talked about cream bleaches as well, and with cream bleaches, just remember they come in a tube, just like you saw the color tube. And with the cream bleach, just remember it is more controllable and typically can be placed directly onto the scalp. Okay, powder bleach should not go on the scalp. Now, if the directions and you carry some powder bleach that says yes it can, okay, that's what they have applied it to. I would not use anything over a 20 volume developer. Okay, don't put anything over 20 on the scalp, directly on the scalp, because you can burn your client. Powder bleaches should not be used on their scalp. Cream bleaches comes in a tube. It's usually bought directly like that, and you can just squeeze it right on the tube onto their head. And that's usually used directly on the scalp, okay? And then you have oil bleaches, and those are a little bit more runny, and typically I believe they can be used on the scalp. I've never used any oil to bleach myself. I usually powder mostly. And then remember about color. Okay, there's two ways to mix it. Use a scale so you can be more exact, or if you want to put the color directly into your mixing bowl, then make sure you always start with your developer first. You can hit your 2 ounces and then apply in there, or 3 ounces or 4 ounces, whatever the mix ratio is. If it's a 1-to-1 and you use 2 ounces of color, you're going to use 2 ounces of developer. Okay, if it's a 1 to 1.5, so you want to use 1.5 of developer, then you're going to use 1 ounce of color and then 1 ounce of developer. Okay, so if that's 2 ounces of color, then you're going to use 2 ounces of color, and then that's going to be 1, or that's going to actually be 2 ounces. Let's use 1, if, I'm sorry, let me start that over. If it's a 1 to 1.5 ratio, and you have 2 ounces of color, okay, then that means you need to put 1 ounce to 1.5. Okay, if it's 2 ounces, that's going to be 3 ounces of developer. Okay, and you can count that because you know you have 2 ounces, 1, 2. Well, if it's 1.5, if this is 1 ounce and 2 ounces of color, then that's going to be 1.5 ounces of developer plus 1.5 equals 3 ounces. So total you'd have 5 ounces of product when you get done mixing, okay? So use the scale or start with your developer first and then put your color in. Same thing with the bleach. If you're using bleach, use the scale for exact measurement. Make sure to read the directions, and then you can mix it directly on the scale. If you're not using the scale, start with your developer first, then apply your bleach in there. When you're using the bottle, of course, and using liquid, usually it's going to be typically a 1-to-1 ratio. Go ahead and start with your measurement there. Use 1 to 2 ounces depending on how much product you need, and then again 1 to 2 ounces of the actual developer, if you want to call it that. Okay, so that is your mixology class on how to mix, and good luck on your practical with this. And so I'm going to give you instructions on how to actually do this practical, but I wanted you to get a little idea of mixing, some more idea and understanding of developers. Remember your developer, lose the 0, that tells you how many levels you can go up, okay? And then typically always remember 20 is your most common. This is all hydrogen peroxide basically, and 20 is also what you use typically for gray hair. All right, guys, you have a great day, and we'll be seeing you on another episode.